Yeah, I think Joss wanted a recording. So, Rich, are you happy to do a quick icebreaker?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
So, I think that in this times of, I did a presentation yesterday at Standard Bank, and like I've realized that the whole country is going through PTSD. So I think that in the spirit of connection and the fact that we all love reading, is there anyone who'd like to share who their favorite literary character is and why?
Ooh.
Yeah.
PK from Power of One. If you've read Power of One, the little South African boy who grew up, and he was just such a cute character, and he went on to be resilient and a boxer, and he had his little grandpa Chook, the chicken, and then he met Tandia. Like there's a whole like love story you follow throughout, and I just always felt his character was just so endearing. And then Puck from The Magician would be the same. Yeah.
Stunning. Anyone else got any ideas?
I'd have to say Gandalf. I mean, it's a little bit like everyone read Lord of the Rings, but like Gandalf is this guy that like you just wish you knew because he just can fix everything, you know. Like whatever's, you know, he's like can call on powers, and whatever's wrong, like if unrest, whatever, he would just go and it would all go away. That maybe a little bit childish, but that's mine.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Wish fulfillment.
Yeah, wish for Gandalf. Who else? Kim, Rich, anyone else?
I think I shared this last time, and I don't read a lot of novels. I'll be honest, but I did share last time that my favorite character was Tani Mariki from the Karoo in the book The Satanic Mechanic, who is just this like amazing like Karoo auntie who makes recipes for love and murder.
Amazing.
So she, I've had COVID since we last had a book club, and someone made me her milk tart, because it was actually the only thing I felt like was like milk tart, and they used her recipe, and it was the best milk tart I've ever tasted in my life. So yeah, her recipes are amazing.
Awesome.
I have two. So I think the one is Moonface from The Faraway Tree. If anyone read the Faraway Tree books when you were little.
Sure.
I just think it's similar to Arnold, like Gandalf, and Moonface also feels like he would just know everything about everything, and he was wise and lovely. And the other one would be Jane Tennyson, you know, the prime suspect, Linda LaPlante. So I like crime fiction, and so Helen Mirren was her in the series, and she just is like this no bullshit, like she just calls a spade a spade. And I like women like that.
And I think, sorry, Veronica, Karen?
Mine would probably be the BFG from Roald Dahl's BFG. I think just the gentle giant, yeah, beautiful sort of nature of him is what I loved.
Anyone else?
Hey, Al.
Hey, everyone. Hi, Rich.
Hello.
Hello, Eleanor.
Hello, Helen.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Sorry I'm late, guys.
Yeah, I told you book club was a good idea at 8 o'clock in the morning, hey?
Absolutely.
So shall we, Rich, do you want to give, because I haven't read The Second Sleep because I couldn't read over COVID, and it was the one thing for 3 weeks I didn't read, which was very sad. But so you've read both the books. I've only read Deep Work. Do you want to kick off?
Yeah, sure. So, in fact, and I recommended The Second Sleep originally. I enjoy Robert Harris a lot. I really loved his story on Cicero, the great orator. My review of this, I'll read you from Goodreads. I said, I enjoyed the premise of this, but I felt that it was a novella the publisher forced a full novel out of. Lots of the book took too long to find its way, and ultimately it was a little bit meh. Like, I really loved the idea of the book. I thought it was brilliant. I just felt that they just dragged it on and on and on longer than, like, I don't think he had the plot to carry it. So it felt like a lot of filler. And I guess to go, I mean, yeah, let's just do that one book. But that theme went across both of the set pieces for me this time round. I'm not sure if anybody else got a chance to read it and if disagrees or agrees or has different thoughts, but yeah. Veronica.
Yeah, I agree completely. It felt, again, you were 100% right. Like it could have been an epic story. Like just the context of it was really, really good. But he went on and I don't feel it got to anything. It didn't actually get to a point of any kind. So yeah, I think it fell flat for me as well.
Yeah. That's a big part of it. Like some books, the work becomes worth it in the end. In this case, it just didn't really feel like it's the end of it all.
Yeah.
Anybody else get a chance to read it or give an attempt and give up?
Yeah, I got through it quite quickly. I agree with you guys. I think it's I think I gave it, I can't find my Goodreads review. I think I gave it 3 or 3.5 stars. For me, the guy, like, I love dystopian fiction, and I love fantasy as well. And for me, it was like the guy he was writing a dystopian novel, but he didn't understand the genre properly. Like it was almost like he was trying to write something that he didn't actually know how to write. Like, there's a certain kind of dystopian ecosystem that I felt he didn't really understand. And the other thing that bothered, I think the premise was amazing. Like it was quite like, I got confused in the beginning when there was that cabinet and then they find this iPhone and I'm like, what's going on here? It's like, you're thinking it's like 17th, 18th century and suddenly finds an iPhone in the cabinet and you're like, what's going on? And then you realize that, like, it's now in the future, but everybody's regressed. And for me, it didn't ring true. Like if you think like if there was dystopia, which we are living in dystopia right now. It's kind of real. Like, I don't think people would go back to the Catholic Church and suddenly become like religious. It just didn't, like, it didn't ring true for me, my kind of dystopia, they're more like vigilante gangs and like funny viruses and like weird weapons and like a new culture, rather than like everybody reverting to the Middle Ages. I thought that was a bit weird, but I liked it. I'm pleased I read it.
I thought that was weird, but I thought that was what made it interesting as well. I mean, Robert Harris is a historical fiction writer, so that's his point of departure, I think, was like, what happens if history repeated itself? Rich, you also read it, eh?
I did, yeah. And I'd actually kind of disagree with Arne on that one, because I think that what he did in terms of reimagining a dystopian future and kind of doing it as a historical, I think in some ways is maybe more accurate than the Mad Max thing. I thought it was, I could totally see scenarios where people revert to the church in times of crisis, and where there's like an anti-science rhetoric and stuff like that. I gave it a 4-star. I really enjoyed it. I found it an easy read. I get the concerns. It wasn't the best book of all time, but I'm probably also, I look at all of my Goodreads reviews and I think I'm generally less discerning. I generally love to read a book and I can get some good out of most of them. And I thought it was interesting. I thought it was a very cool twist on like on a genre that's been very, very done. And it was quite cool to get a fresh new perspective.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other comments on Second Sleep?
Arnold, what I would love is a recommendation, because I do enjoy dystopian fiction, but it tends to be, for me, mostly the young adult genre, because they seem to write it a lot. I'm wondering if you had any recommendations for one. I'd love to. And in fact, the recommendation we are doing this month is from a dystopian future. So I think you guys will enjoy that.
Cool. Yeah, I'll send you a list. I mean, there's this guy, Paolo Bacigalupi, who's quite good. And, a lot of the stuff I read actually is young adult. Like I watched this series on Netflix called Shadow and Bone. I don't know if any of you have seen it. Yeah, I enjoy that stuff. It's designed for hormonal 16-year-olds, but it hits the spot for me, Veronica, did you also enjoy it?
Yeah, I love that sort of genre as well. I watch all of those kinds of shows. My partner thinks I'm completely crazy, but yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so deep work. Rich, you go first.
All right. So here we go. I give it a 2-star. I said, holy shit, this was hard work. I like Newport's thinking a lot and really enjoyed listening to him speak. But the irony of this book that it almost ignores its own idea. This guy writes pages where sentences would have been fine. The result is that the needle of practical value is hidden in the haystack of repetition. It's as if he didn't want to leave any case study out, even though they were mostly just the same thing with differences so subtle they're not worth the attention required to work through them. This book that I would strongly recommend you read the Blinkist Get Abstract version instead. Honestly, only when I hit 70% did I start getting practical value, and the book ended 87% on my Kindle, which was like Christmas come early. The burden of brevity should fall on the writer and not the reader. The verbosity of this book basically says, I feel like my time is important and shouldn't be wasted, but I'm extremely happy to waste yours. Seriously, one well-written article could give you all the value that you would need from this. What a waste of my deep work time.
Go, Rich. Anyone else with any insights and thoughts about deep work?
I kind of felt the same as well. And I also found him quite contradictory. So he'd kind of land a point and then he'd prove the opposite of that point. So I was never really sure which direction he was heading towards. I also only got to about 70% of it and then eventually just gave up. So yeah. I mean, I enjoyed some of the.
That's where he starts actually giving the tips. You should probably pick it up again. Literally at 70% is when he started saying, "Okay, here's the strategies."
This is what you must do.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I need to give it a second round. But I enjoyed some of the case studies, and I am doing an exercise with my team at the moment around doing deep work and the importance of it. But if there is better material than what was in the book, then yeah, I'd rather we shared that, and I'll share that with my team.
I didn't give it as harsh a review as Rich. I gave it 4 stars. I also agreed that what I said is a worthwhile read with some shortcomings. Like many books of this nature, the message could have been conveyed in a lot less time. So I agree that it's like, yeah, you could probably read the Blinkist version and get like a lot out of it. But I thought the concept did like actually help me in the time of my life that I'm in now. And I've actually, I don't know if you guys, if you use Office 365 or Microsoft 365 now, there's this thing called Cortana, and it sends you emails and it says, would you like to make focus time for yourself this week? And I started saying yes. And I actually, it automatically goes into your diary and makes little 2-hour slots for learning, focus, and something else, checking messages or something. And I've started using it, and I actually thought it did make a difference. The one big takeaway I got from it was he says, if you're in a focused session and you get bored, like don't go and do something else. Like what I would do is like I would say, okay, I'm going to think about strategy now. And then I like 5 minutes, I'm like, gosh, I've got any new ideas. Let me go and do some emails or go do something else. And what he says is you must actually sit with that boredom, and you must actually, if you say you're going to sit for an hour and think, then sit for an hour and actually think. And if you get bored, just tough it out, because kind of inspiration is hard work. So I thought that little insight was worth reading the book for. So I thought it was actually, what I didn't like is he's very academic. So all of these examples, I don't know if Veronica and Rich also noticed, like a lot of his examples are about being a college professor, which is like not for most people. For me, that's irrelevant. I don't know what a college professor does. So there were no business examples, but otherwise I thought it was okay. I'm pleased I read it.
Any other thoughts?
My thought is I'm super appreciative of Rich's tip last week, which was to, if you don't feel you got the time to go through a book, look for a long format interview with the guys. So that's what I did. I just searched a bit in the podcast. I found a couple of Cal Newport interviews, and sounds like I saved myself a few hundred pages of unnecessary reading. I think they conveyed the concept really well, and it was actually it's a good tip, Rich. Thanks.
My pleasure. And I want to add that, because I feel I've been harsh about the book, but I mean, I think I said to you last month that I committed that now. So every single morning from 9 to 10, I do deep work, or it's actually reading time. And I found that I'm not driving, so I may as well use that time. I don't have to cram more into my day. It's been the biggest gift. I got through 12 books since we met last. Like, it's just been incredible for me. And that is definitely because of Cal Newport's thinking. So I owe the guy a huge debt of gratitude. I enjoy his thinking. I loved watching the talks. I just didn't, I just personally found the book a bit too much, a bit academic, actually, to Arnold's point. I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
He's a professor. You can see it.
Yeah, I would agree with Rich. I worked at a business school before, so that very academic style, I met them, I worked with them for a long time. But I think that the two concepts for me, deep work, if I had to rate the book, it would probably also be about a 2 or a 3, because it's not a great book. But the concept, there are two things that have been life-changing for me in the way in which I live and work. And the one was the concept of we are permanently in shallow work. So in other words, we constantly task switching. And, you know, when you switch off your email notifications and when you just switch off your phone and you do that deep focus work for 90 minutes, it's life-changing. Like I have gotten to grips with problems and to actually allocate it in your diary. So that was the first one. And the second thing is he speaks about how your first thought is often a lazy thought. So in other words, the real richness of our thinking happens in the second and third layers. And it's only when we do deep work do we go there. So, you know, and if you think of the future and all of us as business owners, like we've got to be so strategic and clever right now about what is happening in the world. And if your competitors are in the business of shallow work and you're doing deep work because you're going to that second and third layer, that's how we're going to solve complex problems. So for me, the big gift he gave me were those two, the shallow work that everyone else is busy with us, and our competitive advantage is actually deep work, and that the lazy thinking happens at your first level, and you've got to challenge yourself and sit, Arnold, to your point, around that second and third layer, you know, because that's actually where your bright sparkness starts to kind of fly.
Are there other good books on the topic? I mean, somebody else said, like, you know, maybe there's a better book on this topic.
I'm not sure, but I'll look into it.
Somebody had an idea there. Who that was?
Yes. Your cherub has got some good ideas of deep work.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done, because he's written 2 books since deep work, Digital Minimalism and another one, which I bought the other day. I can't see where it is. But he speaks a lot about like this constant brain being assaulted by technology and how, you know, it's just not serving us. So maybe, shall we get on to the books that we've got planned, and maybe any other books that anyone's read that they want to share reviews on?
Yeah, I think maybe if we go to other books read, and then we can get to the core premise of going forward, the idea. I think I'm quite excited about it this month. I've seen there's a book that seems to be quite well rated called The One Thing, Arnold, by Gary Keller. And the premise of the book is remove distractions, figure out the most important thing is, and focus relentlessly. I would suggest, though, that even if it's a nicer, well-written book, chances are they're going to say somewhat of a similar thing. And I just wanted to share one resource. Quickly, before we get into everything, I did create let me just see if I can get this up here. That's strange that it's not showing up as an option. Okay, so let me just do a portion of screen sharing quickly. So I did create a Notion page for any of you with the links. The link is in the chat. What happens is I've put some links here of things you can go through, so different tips. There's a little bit about our reading history. If any of you wanted to go and just to add a bit of a dossier on yourselves, you could go here, add yourself as a member, and then you just fill out this, and then we get to know a bit about who you are and how you read and things like that, which could be quite nice to see people who have similar recommendations. So it's super easy. You just go there and just say add yourself as a member and then fill out your details. What I do is I put the detail of each one of our meetups, so the set work books that we've written or that we're writing, that we're talking about, and if anything else big comes up, I will add them there. And then, for example, today's book here, I've added in what the books would be, and we can all add in there. You could also feel free to write reviews and comments in that. I just wanted to share one thing. It's like a Get Abstract, but I think a lot of people don't know it. It's called Get, Story Shorts. And what it is, it's quite clever, is it is audio, video, and text abstracts of books. So what they do, they don't create them, they curate them. So they find the best audio snippet of a book, or the best text one, and the best video one. So depending on how you want to watch them, you can choose to go through and read it that way. It's pretty cool. And they've got some really, really good books. So it's worth a little look. I've put the link there for you as well. Let's just see. I'm curious to see if deep work exists as a concept there. I'll let you know.
That looks really cool.
Very cool.
Just following on what Rich was saying there, that the one thing is definitely it's an interesting read. I think it's definitely related to deep work, but I think slightly it's more focused on what you're working on, whereas I found deep work is much more focused on how to do the actual work. But I thought, for me personally, I thought the one thing was a worthwhile read for sure.
Oh wow! Even with us having read it.
So yeah, I think the one thing's it's a different take on deep work. It's about really honing into, where your value is added, like specifically your business or personal value, and ensuring that you're spending as much time in that space. Again, I probably think like most of these books, it's worthwhile finding the interview or the Get Abstract or something like that. But it's my take on how it differed from deep work is that I found deep work to be it's the technicalities of how to best achieve in your area, how to devote time and get out of this shallow work and kind of make progress. Whereas the one thing is really about defining how it is that you add value, and really focusing incessantly in that area and trying to get rid of all, trying to outsource or move away from all the other aspects of your work and focus as much time in your one thing.
Yeah.
I missed who the author was of that. Sorry, can you repeat it?
The one thing is Gary Keller, the guy who started Keller Williams Realty.
Thank you.
There's another book, That Frog, which is kind of sort of also about doing the most difficult thing first and stop procrastinating.
That one thing, Wayne in our forum, he speaks about it a lot. In other words, as a business owner, what is that one thing that you deliver the most value? And he's been experimenting with that with great results. I'm very drawn to essentialism, deep work, one thing. So clearly there's a trend that strategically I need to be moving there in my life, it would seem. I think you can tell a lot about your book choice, never mind what's actually in the book, Yeah.
Any other books that anyone's read since we met again that they loved or hated that they'd like to share with us?
Well, I'll share the one I've read, which is also, actually, I didn't think of it when you asked me the question, Rich, but it's actually also a dystopian future, I suppose. There's this guy called Kazuo Ishiguro, who's he's an English writer, but he's born in Japan, so he's got quite a strange cultural kind of take on the world. He's written some amazing books. Do you remember there was The Remains of the Day is his book, and Never Let Me Go, I think, was also his book. So this one's called Clara and the Sun, and it's, I think, the first book he's written since he won the Nobel Prize, and it's about this future where there are these kind of toys that kids buy, they're like friends. They're sort of artificial friends, and they're human. They look like humans, but they're not human. So they're you can tell they're not human, but they very much like humans, and they follow you around as your friend, and they kind of look after you. And the first person narrator sort of seems to be the artificial friend. So it's almost like the artificial friend is more human than the actual human. And it's kind of, it asks some very interesting questions about AI and genetic manipulation and all that sort of stuff. It's Kazuo Ishiguro is quite a difficult author. It's not easy and not funny, but like it's one of those books that I think is worth kind of getting through. So I quite enjoyed that one. And I've just started the new Jonathan Safran Foer book called Here I Am, which looks like it's going to be quite interesting.
Awesome, thank you.
Arnold, I also read that Clara and the Sun, and yeah, very, very interesting. But I posted an Economist interview with him, and I think that if you watch that Economist interview, the book makes a lot more sense. Because I took strain with the book. I read a lot of his stuff, but it really is bizarre and very sad. I found it unbearably sad.
So it's like the problem with all his books is every time I read a book of his, I feel anxious. Like there's this underlying sadness and anxiety like permeating, and the prose is very stilted and it's weird, and you have to put it down every now and again.
Definitely not comfort reading.
No, this tip of watching YouTube instead of reading a book, I think, is going to save me a lot of time.
I read quite a nice book. It was a light read and an easy one. It's a book called The Midnight Library by a chap called Matt Haig.
Oh, I loved it.
It's essentially a book about regret. The premise is that there's a kind of purgatory between life and death, where you get to, or where the protagonist gets to look at all the other lives she could have led. She's like a very unhappy person who feels that she's, lived not lived her life well. She's filled with regrets, and in this purgatory, she ends up in this library where she gets to essentially experience all the other lives that she could have led had she made different choices. And I thought it's an easy read, but I thought it was a very cool premise and a very nice book about regret.
I've got it. I haven't read it yet, but people rave about it. I think it won all these awards.
I've recommended it to many people, and every single one has absolutely loved it.
Yeah, he's also a very interesting guy. He went through a lot of depression and things that led to him, he was basically on the border of suicide, is my understanding. And then he decided to reinvent his life. And then I've read a few of his books. The Radleys as well was fun. But like, it's quite interesting because it feels like it's almost quite autobiographical when you know his backstory and then you read the book.
Yeah, what I find interesting about this particular book is the protagonist is female. But he's not female, and it kind of works.
Interesting.
So I read a book by a Japanese author called Haruki Murakami, and the book's called What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. And it's kind of it's not like huge adventure. It's just kind of his reflection over 30 years of long distance running. And I see on Goodreads it's got like a 3.9 review, which isn't amazing. And I can probably imagine why, because I can't imagine it appealing to like someone younger, but I really enjoyed kind of his reflection on getting older and his body not being able to do what it used to be able to do, and how he kind of just reflects on that. And the other book that I reread, and I might reread it a few times, is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And it's a weird book because it makes you put it down. Sometimes after every paragraph, there's like this little symbol, and then you have to go away and think about it. And I'm the kind of person who likes to read a book like from beginning to end, it's done, go. And so it was quite testing again to like read a paragraph and then put the book down and I'll think about it. So I enjoyed that process, and I really enjoy the premise of that book, which is to be present in the moment and that nothing else is actually real except for this very particular moment. So yeah.
You must
that book.
Sorry.
No, just a question. Sorry. I like to read books like that, like in the morning, like the Daily Stoic. There's basically like a passage a day. Is this that kind of book that would be good for a morning read? you kind of read, you stop, and you reflect, or is it? Because that's what
exactly.
it sounds like.
Yeah, I read it in the evening, like every evening, just, yeah. So sometimes it's a page and a half, and then you have to pause, but sometimes it's literally like 3 pauses per page.
Oh,
Tim,
wow.
you can also read that book on YouTube. I mean, he's got like hundreds of YouTube clips on each little section.
Probably.
But the problem, Arnold, and what I was going to say is I try to listen to it on Audible, and he has got the most terrible voice I've ever heard of
So
anyone
boring.
in my whole life. I nearly actually crashed my car because
My problem with
fell
that,
asleep.
he's got no sense of humor.
No, he's boring as hell.
He's the happiest guy in the world, but he's got no sense of humor whatsoever.
Oh my gosh, that's so weird. Maybe like in my mind, he's like not like that at all. Maybe I'm just not going to watch the YouTube.
You must watch the YouTubes. He looks like a, you know, these tourists that come to Cape Town in their sort of safari tops. That's what he looks like.
He was on Oprah. Sorry. He was on
When I
Oprah.
read it, I'm going to read it in Kim's voice.
Yeah. Eleanor, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So, quick disclaimer, I did say to Helen I hadn't read, so that's the reason for my silence. But I did do Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Really enjoyed the read. Actually read it twice. Around negotiation and just a way of saying things, and we're actually using it in our business now to type emails and get some positive responses back. And then just on Helen's point, you know, what you read most is probably where you're heading. Is I'm reading How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicola LaPera, just around mental wellness. And I found it it's not a boring psychology book, but a really great book. And you read a page, you put it down, and you say, okay, well, what do I need to do now? So it forces you to take action. So yeah, those are the 2 for me.
Nice. There was someone on one of our first book club meetings who was speaking about they'd never split the difference, and they said that book ruined their business. Everyone was negotiating themselves into a coma, and then the guy said like literally all their deals went down the drain. And remember, Richard, there was someone who was on one of the first ones. So just be careful that all your deals are not going down the drain.
I was intrigued by that book. Eleanor, what was the main takeaway from it? I mean, what is his
which one? Never Split the Difference. So I think his main takeaway is that, for me, most certainly was that sometimes push for the no. So just to get a response out of a client, it's okay to hear no, and it's all about how you frame the question to them. Number 1. Number 2, begin with a figure in mind where you want to end up, and rather than going in guns blazing, which is what we normally do, you say, I'll do it for 20K and no less, is get your client to start seeing why you need to be paid, what you need to be paid from their perspective. So those are the 2 main takeouts for me. And I think just like a rewording of some of our emails has forced clients to say, no, it's not that I don't want to do the business right now. It's that we are in this position. So you have more information. So, and then you get the conversation going. So yeah, I think, Helen, I hear you. Careful on the hacks that you take out of the book. But those are the main ones for me, Arnold, the 2 main ones.
Well, what the person said was that it's very un-South African, you know, that American, very hard style negotiation. I mean, I've had Canadian business partners, and I mean, those Canadians used to come here and just piss everyone off because it's not our style. It's not how we roll. And we've got a much more gentle style in South Africa, and it's much more relationship based.
Has anybody read? So I found that my problem with the book was that, I mean, there's a lot of value in it, but I found him unlikable, which was a problem for me. So I actually didn't like his approach. I even the premise of Never Split the Difference feels like a horrible way to be a human being. I'd previously read, and he goes to kind of war with it, which is admirable. But I'd previously read Getting to Yes when I was a kid, well, when I started in business, and he kind of argues that this doesn't work, except that I've had such understanding the principles of BATNA and things like this had been so helpful for me as a tool. And I found that on reflection, like a couple of years down the line, I actually preferred Getting to Yes. And I feel that those maybe speak more to the South African style as an observation. But it's worth reading both, I think.
Yeah, cool. So shall we chat about way forward?
I just want to do a couple of the shares quickly. Sorry, Veronica.
Sorry. I just wanted to share one that I read over the last month. It's called Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Adichie. And it was quite nice. It was set in Nigeria, the story of a young girl. But in contrast to the girl with the lighting voice, this girl comes from privilege. And it kind of shows that Nigeria is a harsh place to live, ultimately, because whether you come from poverty or whether you come from privilege, like, parents just tend to be really, really hard on their kids. But what I loved about it again was just hearing it, because I did the Audible version, was just hearing it again in that accent. I think it's just so endearing for a book. So, you know, not anything groundbreaking, but just a nice, easy read. So I really enjoyed it.
Is that one you would then recommend in Audible? Because I like choosing and picking. If it's a really nicely read one, then I would listen to it.
Yeah, definitely an Audible. I think hearing the accent just makes the book. It was the same for me with the girl with the lighting voice. Hearing her narrate it was just beautiful.
Awesome. Okay, and then just quickly, for me, 3 books that I wanted to mention. I read 2 science fiction books, which is not a genre I read a lot of. The first is called The 3-Body Problem. That, my God, like I just realized I'm not smart enough to understand this book. And I'm going to mention the second one I read as well, because they're quite similar. So the second one is called, well, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. He's the guy who wrote The Martian. I think The 3-Body Problem is probably a better book on any level, but I loved reading Project Hail Mary 10 times more than I enjoyed reading The 3-Body Problem. So they both give you a lot of maths. I didn't do maths in matric. They do a lot of maths, except the one makes it feel, or the physics and the science feel very accessible and ties it into a narrative. And the other person just loves maths. So if that's not your thing, I felt like I lost a lot of what the brilliance of the book was. But I think I can understand why it's one of the highest rated science fiction books at the moment, because it's absolutely brilliant. I didn't find it easy. And then a very quick honorable mention, because I thought The Choice, I mentioned it last month, by Edith Eger, was just incredible, life-changingly good. I'm just blown away by how magnificent it was and how magnificent she is. I just think it was incredible. But the one I also wanted to mention, and obviously this speaks to my discipline a lot, but it's How to Win an Argument by Marcus Tullius Cicero. And it's the translation by James May. I got it on Audible, listened to the whole thing, and immediately bought the Kindle version and started reading it again so I can make more notes on it. I think I've owned a presentation company for 24 years. I think this is probably the best presentation book I've ever read. I think it's absolutely magnificent. It's very specific. You'd have to enjoy that kind of thing, but I think it is absolutely magnificent and I highly recommend it. And it's super easy.
What's the name of the last one, sorry?
How to Win an Argument. And remember that, the rhetoricians didn't see argument as a fight. Argument for them was 2 human beings trying to progress each other's knowledge by a clash of ideas until they approved. So it's not about fighting.
Is this the one, An Ancient Guide to the Art of Persuasion? Is that it?
Yes, yellow cover with a statue on the front of Cicero, and it's the James May translation, because there's a number of translations.
Just like that one.
That's the one.
So I half read a book, but I think it's worth speaking about it before we go into the books for next time, called A Paragon. Has anyone come across it? So the person, I have like a book mentor, and she gives really good insight. It's APAEIROGON. So it's basically, and the style of it is so interesting. It's like there's a sentence is like a paragraph, and it's about a Jewish man and a Palestinian man, and both of them have lost children during the Middle Eastern kind of turmoil, and it's written on for both of their perspectives. And a lot of people say it's the most beautiful book that has come out of this time. It's by a guy called Colm McCann. So it might be something interesting if, because I think that's a scenario, like the more you read, it's just so interesting and so tragic. And yeah, and this book, I only half read it, and then I got COVID, but I'm going to pick up on it. But the style of it, and it's beautiful. You can just see the writing, really stunning.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm going to duck out, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
Cool. Nice to see you.
Kim.
Cheers, Kim. I put the books in the Notion so she can get them. Okay, so we had about the premise. Sorry, Arnold.
Helen, is that a book? Is that one that you were reporting that you read, or is that one that we've got to read now for the next meeting?
No, that was one that I'm reporting that I've read, but I'd only read half, but it really is beautiful. It's definitely worth reading.
When Helen and I had a chat on Monday, and we were chatting about maybe the idea of having a theme for certain months, and we got chatting, and one of the discussions that came up was around the ratio of books that we read by male to female authors. And I had a look at my Goodreads, and I actually have read, I read Maeve Binchy, and I read ladies fiction as well, and things like that, Jojo Moyes and stuff I really love. But I was quite embarrassed by how the ratio of books written by male to female that I read was. And we thought it'd be interesting to pick 2 books this month that were written by women, just to try and open up our horizons a bit. I'm curious for, I guess, the men on the call, do you find that you read, when you look at your reading, do you find that your ratio does seem to be skewed towards male authors? Helen is about 50-50.
I'm looking now. If you'd asked me, I would have said probably less than half female, but it's hardly any. I think the last book I read was by women was Kate Atkinson, which was quite a while ago. So most of mine by miles are men.
Yeah, and it was quite interesting.
And I never even thought of that. And Zadie Smith, so yeah, I've hardly read any women's books in the last couple of years. That's weird. Okay.
Rich?
Okay.
It's not something I ever look at, to be honest. It's not something I take into consideration when thinking of a book, but I'm browsing through my Goodreads, I can see very, very few female authors. Catherine Stockett in The Help, Laura Hillebrand, but it looks like Hilary Mantel, actually. But yeah, I'd say it looks like it's probably about 90%, 90-10, something along those lines.
So part of Rich and I's discussion was I met Ben Trovato, what would you call him? He's a
satirist, maybe.
Satirist, yeah. I met his very bitter ex-wife a couple of years ago, and she was saying that he makes a point of not reading female authors. And apparently, so that then went on to a whole interesting discussion. And then I came home, and my husband's an avid reader. And then I looked at his whole, he's got this huge kind of library. And the only book that was by a woman on the whole shelf was Helen Ziller. I was like, good God. So that prompted a whole interesting article in itself, or discussion. But yeah, so apparently it is a thing. It's like an unconscious bias. So I thought maybe it'd be interesting because August is so-called Women's Month here, and it might be interesting. So we suggested, So I suggested the fiction one and Richard suggested the business one.
And the fiction one is an interesting premise. And I've actually also given 2 other books because Helen has run it. I've challenged her, read it. I've challenged her with another one. The book is called The End of Men. And it's a dystopian future in which basically almost all the men die and how the new societies happen. I don't know if any of you have read the comic book, probably my favorite comic book series of all time. It's called Why the Last Man by Brian K. Vaughan. It is magnificent. If you only start reading one series of graphic novels, it's all adults and he is the last man on the planet. And they're trying to work out why he's the only one who didn't die. Netflix is just, I've also put the trailer in the Notion page for the new Netflix series that's starting on it. And then the similar book that I added is to The End of Men, which is the one we're going to be reading, is called End of Men, which is 2 female authors, both wrote similar books within a year of each other, both fiction. So I'm going to try and work through both of them because I want to just see like what their different premises were and takes on the world. Helen, you read it. Any thoughts or pointers just about why we thought it was a good starter?
I didn't know anything about it, and when I was in exclusive books, I've registered myself as a book club, so I get a 25% discount because I like hard, proper books. So I had this huge big pile, and The End of Men was on the top. And then I bumped into a client of mine. He said, "Gee, like, wow, you have some issues with like The End of Men on the top of my pile." I said, "No, I don't really." And but it's a fascinating because she writes it before COVID. And then COVID happened. So the forward then is written, you know, like she could never have imagined that there were actually some similarities in what she kind of predicted. But yeah, I thought it great, such interesting societal, cultural, interesting stuff. So yeah, I would highly recommend it.
That's the edition. Christina Sweeney Baird. I have linked to it in the Notion here, and then you'll see there's the Why the Last Man, the comic book. And then here's the other one, and you'll see it's actually a similar book called End of Men by Suzanne Strobel, which is a similar premise that we could have a look at. So if you got time, it might be a fun comparison. And then the business book is one I've just started. I had listening to this one on Audible, but I'm loving it. It was recommended to me by the head of talent, Tseliwe from Old Mutual. And she said it was excellent, and I'm really enjoying it. It's written by Patty McCord, who's basically the head of talent for Netflix. And she talks about why her and Reed Hastings left their previous. I didn't know Reed Hastings wasn't the founder of Netflix. I thought, you know, if you asked me who's the founder of Netflix, I would have said Reed Hastings. They left another company to join Netflix. And they evolved it, and why she went with them, and how they carpooled every day in their discussions and what to change and how they built the culture of Netflix. And she was one of the co-creators of that famous Netflix culture deck that got sent around so much. I'm listening to the audio version of this one and really, really enjoying it as well.
Yeah, so those are the 2 men, or The End of Men and Powerful. So we'll put it on the group. But yeah, I think those are going to be interesting.
So is the Notion page, is that the place that we should refer to then for like everything?
You don't have to do, I mean, I've linked to it in the WhatsApp. It's just where I'll post the links to anything. And if we have, like if somebody.
Did you all lose Rich as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always interesting the position that people are in when they freeze, you know. It's never when you're doing something normal.
Okay, but then you'll post the books on the WhatsApp group as well. I mean, yeah. I guess that's the main place where we all interact. Cool. I'm looking forward to reading them.
Yeah. I mean, I think the whole purpose of a book club is to start reading stuff that maybe, you know, is slightly out of your lane, you know, so it's exciting. So anything in closing?
Well, lovely to meet Veronica and Eleanor and yourself, Helen, because I didn't know you guys before. I knew everybody else on the call. So
what is your business, Arnold? Are you obviously based in, because you and Rich, I don't
I'm based in Cape Town. My business is called Tremerton Capital. It's listed on the JSE, and it's an investment business, for want of a better term. But we've gravitated away from we used to be quite big in property and gaming, and now our biggest business is called Generation Education. It's a school business. So we have 8 schools that are all Montessori pre-schools, phase. And then we go all the way to tertiary. But our high schools are still, we've only been going 5 or 6 years. So our high schools are still, our junior schools are quite well established, and we're moving into the high school and tertiary field.
Amazing. And you, Rich, what do you do? Because I don't know.
I've got sorry. I've got a luxury property business. So basically, quite a lot of it's hospitality focused. We've got about 150 villas and apartments in Campstay and Clifton that we rent out on short-term basis to tourists. And then we've got a kind of traditional real estate sales and long-term rental in that same Atlantic seaboard area in Cape Town.
Cool.
Can we do a whip round? Because I don't know what Eleanor and Veronica and Helen do either. So can we just give a quick...
Yeah, we've got 5 more minutes. So V, tell us, what's your elevator pitch?
So I own an advertising agency. We are about 50 people in the agency. We're full service. So we do everything from traditional to digital to below the line marketing. And we've been around now for 21 years. So we're getting into our adult years now, which is great.
It's called Penguin.
Penguin, yeah.
And Eleanor?
So I run a company called, one of the companies that I run is called Mindfuse. So we are a strategic events agency. So we help business deliver strategy in a creative way. So if they want to communicate their strategy, we help them to deliver it creatively. Yeah.
And I run a business called the Networking Company. So it's a leadership development company. So we specialize mainly in the corporate market, teaching them so-called soft skills, which are actually essential skills. And we do a lot of work in the women's leadership space.
Cool. Well, great to meet you guys. I look forward to the book club.
Yeah, lekker to meet everyone. I'm looking forward to this.
It's
out of my comfort zone.
Out ideas and also people who love reading. So yeah. So can we set another date? So in other words, two months. Does this Wednesday 8 to 9 still work for everyone?
It's fine for me.
It's fine for me. I'll just be a little bit late normally because I'm dropping the kid at school, but it's fine.
And maybe what we should do is do 8:15 to 9 o'clock.
That'd be amazing.
So today is the 14th. So if we do maybe like Wednesday, the 8th of September.
Yeah, that's good for me.
Perfect.
So, and then if we do it 8:15 to 9 o'clock. So it just gives us all a little bit of breathing space in the morning.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. All right, I'll send out the request.
Sorry, I can't do the 8th because I've got a meet and greet with Forum 5. I'm on the board this year, and I've got like a forum, like in that morning. I've got to do like an intro to Forum.
No problem. What about the 15th? So the next Wednesday.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right, cool. I'll send it out.
Are you going to send us
Thanks,
an
Helen.
I will.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice
Have a
see
good
you
one.
all. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.